Every year, the news reminds us of how powerful nature can be. A hurricane here, a wildfire there, footage of destruction that fills our screens for a few days before the world moves on. But the truth is, most of the deadliest natural disasters in human history didn't happen on camera. They didn't come with satellite images, social media clips, or live broadcasts. They struck quietly, or before modern technology existed at all, leaving behind numbers so large they almost defy understanding. And yet each one of these disasters left a trace, a clue, written into the geography of our planet. Because nature doesn't strike randomly. It follows patterns. Patterns shaped by mountains, coastlines, soil rivers, and the invisible boundaries of tectonic plates. And when you place those patterns onto a map, something incredible becomes clear. The story of our world's greatest catastrophes is also the story of where we choose to live. So today, we're going to uncover those patterns. We'll explore the deadliest natural disasters ever recorded, understand what made them so destructive, and learn why some regions of Earth are far more vulnerable than others. And along the way, we'll see how geography, more than anything else, decides the difference between danger and safety, between survival and tragedy. This is the hidden logic of our planet, explained through the events that changed human history forever. Have you ever wondered what the deadliest natural disaster in history really was? Not the most famous one. Not the one that looked the most dramatic on TV. But the one that silently, brutally, and overwhelmingly claimed the largest number of human lives. And more importantly, why certain places on Earth seem destined to suffer more than others. Today we're going to explore the deadliest natural disasters ever recorded and uncover the hidden patterns behind them. Patterns written not just in history, but on the map of our planet itself. When you look at a world map, you probably see borders and countries. But beneath those borders lies something far more ancient. A geological chessboard, plates colliding, rivers shifting, oceans warming. And humanity for thousands of years has chosen to gather in places that are both incredibly fertile and incredibly dangerous. Why? Because the same forces that make land rich, flat, and easy to farm are the same forces that can destroy it without warning. Floodplains feed civilizations. River deltas invite cities. Volcanic soil is fertile. Coastlines attract trade. But all of them come with a cost. And that cost becomes painfully clear when we examine the deadliest natural disasters ever recorded. Let's begin with a type of disaster that doesn't make dramatic footage, doesn't destroy buildings in seconds, and doesn't create viral videos. But it is by far the deadliest force of nature humanity has ever experienced. The Great Chinese Famine of 1959 to 1961. Depending on the estimate, between 15 and 45 million people died. The numbers are so large they almost don't feel real. But they happened. And they happened because nature and human decisions collided at the worst possible moment. In the late 1950s, China attempted a massive agricultural restructuring. Fields were reorganized. Farming methods were changed. At the same time, unusual weather patterns brought drought in some regions and flooding in others. Crops failed repeatedly. Food supplies collapsed. Entire provinces were pushed into starvation. If you look at a map, you'll notice something important. Most of the hardest hit areas were huge agricultural centers, densely populated and deeply dependent on stable harvests. When the weather shifted even slightly, tens of millions were suddenly vulnerable. Nature set the conditions, but social systems determined the scale of the tragedy. This is one of the key ideas we'll see again and again. Natural disasters become deadly not just because of what nature does, but because of where people live, how they prepare, and what they rely on to survive. Now let's go back further to the year 1556. In the Chinese province of Shaanxi, the ground shook with one of the most devastating earthquakes in history. The death toll is estimated at around 830,000 people. But what made this earthquake so deadly wasn't just the magnitude. It was the type of homes people lived in. Many families carved their houses into soft hillsides, made of loess, a light powdery soil. These cave-style homes were cool in summer, warm in winter, and easy to dig. Perfect for life, until the earth started shaking. When the earthquake hit, entire hillsides collapsed. Entire villages were buried instantly. The landscape itself became the weapon. A single geological feature turned a strong earthquake into the deadliest one ever recorded. Again, the map tells the story. A region full of loess plateau terrain, densely populated valleys, limited construction alternatives. Geography sets the stage long before a disaster begins. But earthquakes are not the only force capable of wiping out millions. Water can be just as unforgiving. In 1931, China experienced what many historians consider the deadliest flood in modern history. Between 1 and 4 million people died when the Yangtze River, the Huai River, and the Yellow River all flooded during the same catastrophic season. This flood wasn't a single event. It was months of heavy snow followed by spring thaw, followed by weeks of relentless rain. The rivers overflowed into some of the most densely inhabited floodplains on Earth. Cities, farms, and entire regions were submerged. Here again, the map reveals something fascinating. The Yellow River is sometimes called China's sorrow. That's because it frequently changes its course, carving new paths across the plains. Over centuries, people kept building levees to control it. But those levees also trapped water. When they failed catastrophically. The lesson is clear: humans often live in the most dangerous locations, because those locations are also the most life-giving. And that delicate balance can collapse with terrifying speed. Let's move to the Indian Ocean, December 26, 2004. A massive earthquake off the coast of Sumatra triggered a tsunami that raced across the ocean faster than a jet plane. It struck Indonesia first, then Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and even reached the east coast of Africa. 230,000 people died. Coastal towns had almost no warning systems. Many people didn't recognize the signs. The sudden retreat of the sea, the unusual silence until the wave arrived. And by then, it was too late. If you look at a map of population density around the Indian Ocean in 2004, you'll see exactly why the impact was so devastating. The tsunami hit some of the most crowded coastlines in the world. Fishing villages, beach resorts, and low-lying communities were directly exposed. Geography once again magnified the force of nature. Just a few decades earlier, in 1970, another event became one of the deadliest storms in history. Cyclone Bola struck East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. High winds were deadly, but the true killer was the storm surge, a massive rise in sea level pushed inland by the storm. Hundreds of thousands of people drowned as water swept across the flat delta region. Most of Bangladesh's coastline sits barely above sea level. Homes were simple. Warning systems were limited. And political tensions delayed rescue efforts. Everything that could go wrong did. When we map the regions most vulnerable to cyclones today, Bangladesh still appears near the top. Not because storms there are stronger than elsewhere, but because millions live on land that is both fertile and fragile, protected only by a few meters of elevation. At this point, a pattern should be emerging. Millions die not simply because disasters happen, but because they happen in places where human vulnerability is highest. If we wanted to express this idea in one simple formula, it would be this. A natural disaster is the power of nature multiplied by the vulnerability of society. A strong event plus a resilient population equals a tragedy, but a survivable one. A moderate event plus a fragile population can become catastrophic. Let's apply this formula to the present. On today's maps, we see new zones of risk emerging. Coastal megacities with tens of millions of people. River deltas sinking due to groundwater extraction. Island nations facing rising sea levels. Regions where droughts will become more frequent. And places where extreme weather is intensifying. But unlike in the past, we now have something powerful on our side: knowledge. Early warning systems that can give coastal communities hours of preparation. Satellites that track storms long before they make landfall. Flood models powered by artificial intelligence. Better infrastructure, better planning, better communication. Human vulnerability is not fixed. It can be reduced, it can be managed. And while we may never stop earthquakes, cyclones, droughts, or tsunamis, we can limit how much harm they do. So, what do the deadliest natural disasters in history really teach us? They teach us that our planet is alive, that it shifts, breathes heats, cools, floods, and shakes regardless of political borders or human plans. They teach us that nature isn't something outside of civilization, but something civilization is built upon. And they remind us that every thriving city, every fertile field, and every coastal paradise exists because of and in spite of Earth's natural forces. When we study the past, we're not looking at ancient tragedies. We're looking at instructions, maps showing us where danger lies, patterns showing us how disasters escalate, clues telling us how to survive the next century. Because natural disasters will continue. But their death toll doesn't have to. Understanding them is the first step. Preparing for them is the second. And remembering the lessons of history is the third. The deadliest natural disasters ever recorded may belong to the past. But the choices we make today will determine whether disasters of the future become tragedies or simply challenges we are ready to face. Humanity has never been more capable of predicting, preparing, and protecting. The map of the future isn't written. We are still drawing it. And with the right knowledge, it can be far safer than the past. If there's one thing these disasters teach us, it's that nature is neither friend nor enemy. It's simply powerful. It creates the landscapes we rely on, and sometimes it reshapes them without warning. But as overwhelming as these forces can seem, the future doesn't have to look like the past. Today, we can forecast storms days in advance. We can model tsunamis before the wave reaches land. We can map earthquake risks down to the street level and use satellites to track droughts as they form. Technology gives us a kind of foresight that our ancestors never had. And every year, this foresight saves countless lives. The question is not whether disasters will continue. They will. The question is whether we choose to learn from the patterns they reveal. Because the same maps that show us where tragedy once struck also show us how to prevent it from happening again. By understanding the past, we prepare for the future. By studying the world's deadliest natural disasters, we uncover the knowledge that makes tomorrow safer. Thank you for watching. And remember, the more we understand our planet, the better we can live with it.